You can look at the death of legendary soul singer Sam Cooke in two different ways. Either you completely believe how the events were portrayed in the court proceedings and media at the time, or you can look at everything surrounding Cooke's life and the event itself with skepticism. Away from the stage and recording studio, Cooke's life had become something of a convoluted mess. Adultery, business deals gone bad, backstabbing, and finally being shot to death in a $3 a night motel. Trying to unpack the truth behind his death is extremely difficult. Nothing about the circumstances or people involved is straightforward in any way. Sam Cooke was born in Clarksdale, Mississippi on the 22nd of January 1931. He was one of 8 siblings to his parents Annie Mae Cooke and Reverend Charles Cooke, who was a Baptist minister. His family moved to Chicago in 1933, and in 1953 Cooke married his first wife Dolores, though the couple would divorce just 4 years later. Tragically, Dolores would die in a car accident the following year, and though divorced, Cooke paid for her funeral. He would then go on to become the lead singer of a group named the Soul Stirrers, and around this time Cooke first met Bobby Womack, who was in a group named the Womack Brothers. Cooke would prove to be something of a mentor to Bobby and help them to go on tour opening for the Soul Stirrers. After modest success with the group, in 1957 Cooke embarked on what would prove to be a massively successful solo career. His first hit was the song You Send Me.
Darling, you send me, honest you, honest you, honest you, whoa, whoa. You thrill me, I know that you thrill me, darling, you thrill me, honest.
Cooke would marry his second wife Barbara Campbell Cooke in 1958. The couple had 3 children together, Linda, Tracy and Vincent. Though sadly Vincent died at 18 months old after drowning in the family's swimming pool. It's also believed he fathered 3 other children to different women, as well as to his wife.
A little capsule version of the Sam Cooke story. How did it all happen?
A little caption version. Born, my father was a minister. I started singing in the church naturally because I was exposed to gospel singing first, Mike. Came out of school, went with a professional gospel group called the Soul Stirrers. Sang around the country with them for about 5 years. Decided to go on my own. Made a song called You Send Me. It sold about 1.5 million copies for me, luckily enough.
As well as his second marriage in 1958, Cooke himself was hospitalised after being involved in a car accident, and his chauffeur was actually killed in the crash. Despite the turmoil and tragedies in his personal life, Cooke's career was beginning to pick up pace with hits like Chain Gang, Wonderful World, Cupid and Twisting the Night Away.
Here's the man in evening clothes. How he got here, I don't know, but man, you ought to see him go, twisting the night away. He's dancing with the chicken slacks. The chicks are moving up and back. Oh man, there ain't nothing like twisting the night away. They're twisting, twisting. Everybody's feeling great. They're twisting, twisting the night. Let's twist a while. Yeah.
In 1961 he started his own record company. Amongst those signed to the label were the Valentinos, which was the new name of Bobby Womack and his brothers' group. In 1963, Cooke met the controversial figure Alan Klein. Klein would negotiate a lucrative 5-album deal for the singer, who was one of his earliest clients. After the death of Cooke a year later, Klein found himself owning the rights to his music catalogue, much to the dismay of Cooke's bereaved wife and children. This has caused some to speculate and believe he may have been involved in the singer's death, as owning the rights to Cooke's songs proved to be an absolute moneymaker. Klein, who was building a reputation as something of a bully, would also become involved in controversy with the Rolling Stones. In 1969 he became manager of the Beatles, much to the dismay of Paul McCartney, and many blamed Klein for the group breaking up. In April 1964, Sam Cooke made an appearance on Bandstand with host Dick Clark. Sadly, by the end of this year, he would be killed.
What year, we're reminiscing today and using the all-time, old-time goodies and all that stuff. What was the first year you recorded You Send Me?
Send Me, Dick, that was in 57.
All right, what caused you at that point in your career of 57 to turn to this kind of singing?
My economic situation.
That's a very honest answer. What's the secret?
I think the secret is really observation, Dick.
What do you mean?
Well, if you observe what's going on and try to figure out how people are thinking and determine the times of your day, I think you can always write something that the people will understand.
All right, now you've solidified your own career as far as the singing and the records go. What do you hope to do in the future? You're doing different things now, aren't you?
Yeah, well, now, Dick, I'm working mostly with other young singers, you know.
Wait a minute. Young singers. Cassius Clay is a young singer. Did you do that record?
Yes, I did. You know, not the Stand By Me. Yeah. I did the one called Hey Hey, the Gang's All Here. Yeah.
Was it fun?
It's a lot of fun because Cassius is a fun guy.
You don't dare to have any just ask.
No arguments, really.
Just ask a few other people that tell you no. You don't dare argue with this cat. That's for sure. What could be the greatest thing in the world that would happen to you if you had your choice?
The greatest thing that happened to me if all the singers I'm connected with had hits.
I will knock on wood and hope the whole thing goes.
On December the 10th, 1964, Cooke went to Martoni's restaurant in Hollywood, Los Angeles. He was joined for dinner by friend and music engineer Al Schmidt and his wife Joan. Martoni's was a popular venue amongst Hollywood's elite. According to witnesses, Cooke was seen waving around a wad of $5,000, apparently his take from some recent concert dates. In today's money, that's the equivalent of around $50,000, so a considerable sum of cash. Schmidt last saw his friend chatting with a young woman he didn't recognise. She would later be identified as 22-year-old Alyssa Boyer. It's believed Boyer was a prostitute, and indeed a month after Cooke's death she was arrested for prostitution, although those charges would later be dismissed for entrapment. However, Boyer would be found guilty of second-degree murder in 1979 after the death of her ex-boyfriend. The pair left the restaurant together in Cooke's red Ferrari. According to Boyer, she told Cooke she wanted to go home, but he refused, and would drive around 15 miles, past several other motels before eventually arriving at the Hacienda Motel. And he seemingly deliberately drove to this particular motel. The night manager there was a 55-year-old woman by the name of Bertha Franklin. It would later transpire that Franklin had a criminal record for pimping. The hotel itself was known for pimping and prostitution. Around 3 a.m. on the morning of the 11th of December, the pair signed into the motel and made their way to their room. Boyer then claims Cooke forced her onto the bed, tearing off her clothes and molesting her. When Cooke went into the bathroom, she scooped up a pile of clothes on the floor, which also included Cooke's, and ran out of the room. She claimed she knocked on the manager's door, but Franklin didn't answer in time, so she ran out of the hotel. From here, the testimony of what happened switches to Bertha Franklin. Bertha claimed she was on a phone call with the hotel's owner, Evelyn Carr, when Cooke suddenly began banging on the door and asking where the girl was. Franklin said she told him there was no one in there but her, at which point he allegedly became enraged and broke through the office door. Cooke was naked except for one shoe and a sports jacket. A struggle ensued. Franklin claims Cooke punched her twice in the face before grabbing her arms. She scratched and bit in order to get him off. The pair fell to the floor, and as she was released she got up and grabbed her gun, firing 3 shots. One of the shots hit Cooke in the chest, piercing his heart. Franklin claims Cooke said to her in an inquisitive tone, "Lady, you shot me." He then made his way towards Franklin, who began hitting him over the head with a broomstick before he eventually collapsed in the corner of the room and died. Cooke was just 33 years old at the time of his death. The police were contacted and arrived on scene at the motel. Neither of the women had any visible marks or injuries after the incident. Police visited Cooke's wife Barbara around 6 a.m. to inform her of her husband's death. Just 5 days later, a trial was held. The lawyers working on Sam Cooke's behalf were not allowed to question either Boyer or Franklin, who who had given testimony on the stand.
And he dragged me into that room. I started talking very loudly, and I told him, please take me home. He latched the night latch on, and he pushed me on the bed. And he says, well, we're just going to talk. I knew that he was about to rape me. So while he was in the bathroom, I picked up my clothes, my shoes, and my handbag. I opened the latch, and I ran out.
And he grabbed both of my arms and started twisting them and asked me where was the girl. I started kicking, and he maybe have a bite, I don't know, but I tried to bite him through that jacket.
You tried to bite Mr. Cooke?
Yeah, I was fighting, scratching, biting, and everything. Finally, I got up and grabbed a pistol. I started shooting.
And how many times did you fire this pistol?
3 times.
Did you know you struck Mr. Cooke?
Yes, because he said, later you shot me.
The motel owner, Evelyn Carr, told how she heard the altercation and subsequent gunshots while on a call with Franklin. The 7 jurors took just 15 minutes in deliberation to return with a verdict of justifiable homicide. This came as a blow to Cooke's friends and family, who suspected there was more to the story. On the 18th of December, around 20,000 people lined the streets of Chicago, where a service was held for the deceased singer. A day later, his casket was flown back to LA, where his body was viewed in an open casket ceremony. There were many people shocked by the level of injuries inflicted on Cooke, and questioned whether Franklin's claims about hitting him with a broomstick could possibly inflict the kind of injuries they saw. Though his head had been covered in makeup by mortuary staff, his injuries were still clearly visible. Singer and friend of Cooke, Etta James, would write in her memoir how his head looked like it was disconnected from his shoulders, and his hands looked broken and crushed. Muhammad Ali, who was also a close friend of Cooke, criticised the lack of investigation by police. Sam Cooke would be buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Los Angeles. The month following his death, the single Shake was released. The B-side was a song called A Change Is Gonna Come, a song which would become something of an anthem in the civil rights movement.
It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. 'Cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will.
Just a mere 3 months after the death of Sam Cooke, his widowed wife Barbara would marry Bobby Womack, leading some to believe they may have been involved together before the death of Sam. Either way, it was seen by many as a betrayal, not just by Barbara, but by Womack as well. Someone who Cooke had mentored and been incredibly helpful in building his career. Bobby Womack's own brothers turned against him, as did the estranged brothers of Sam Cooke, Charles and David Cooke, who broke Bobby's jaw in an incident in a Chicago hotel. However, the betrayal of Bobby Womack was not finished there. Barbara caught Bobby and her 17-year-old daughter Linda having an affair. Barbara even shot at Bobby, the bullet grazing his forehead. Though Bobby and Linda would begin a relationship, Linda would actually go on to marry Bobby's brother Cecil in 1979, and the pair would form the musical partnership Womack and Womack. The whole story sounded more like an episode of Jerry Springer. So we've covered the official version of Sam Cooke's death, but what do you think? Does this version of events ring true? Or do you think someone else could have been involved? Alan Klein was a ruthless businessman who ended up profiting massively after Cooke's death. It doesn't seem totally outlandish to think he could have had some connections to organise a hit. Or what about Barbara and Bobby? There's more than enough reason to believe they were involved in some kind of affair before Cooke's death, marrying just 3 months after. At the time, Barbara had probably believed the death of Sam would release her from a marriage as well as be financially profitable. not realising Klein would take the musical rights of her deceased husband's work. There's certainly a lot to think about in this case, and I'm not totally convinced the official version is the actual version of how things went. So the version I'm about to tell you is just a theory. My theory. I'm in no way claiming knowledge this is actually what happened. I'm presenting this theory based on the evidence, and as I see it, the most likely version of events. You may disagree, believing the official version, or even have your own theory, but this is how I believe things happened that night. So let's go back a bit. Cooke was in Martoni's restaurant flashing money around, something that didn't go unnoticed by Alyssa Boyer. When the pair left, Boyer, who worked as a prostitute, guided Sam to the Hacienda Motel, a place she was already familiar with. The motel was known for pimping and prostitution, and the night manager Bertha Franklin was involved in organising this, something she would later be convicted of away from the death of Sam Cooke. Cooke and Boyer made their way to their room, and the pair may or may not have engaged in intimacy. A naked Cooke then went to the bathroom, at which point Boyer took the opportunity for a bigger payday, stealing a pile of money Cooke had been in possession of. Gathering up her own clothes, as well as most of Cooke's, she made a break for it, hoping carrying Cooke's clothes would deter the singer from chasing her. She ran to the office of Franklin to hide. Whether Boyer made it in or not is unclear, but I suspect she did, and certainly Cooke believed she was in there. Cooke forced his way into the office, but he was not expecting what was to come. Being that the motel was used for prostitution, as these kind of establishments tend to do, Franklin had employed at least one member of security, used as muscle for the kind of situations where customers become upset or overstay their welcome. On forcing his way into the office, Cooke, who was not known for violent outbursts and was relatively small in stature, was brutally beaten by the much larger hired help. This would explain the extensive injuries to his head witnessed after his death, and his broken hands and fingers were defensive wounds, as he was likely trying to protect his head from the blows. There was now a decision to make. There was a stolen pile of cash and a badly beaten celebrity in a place being used for pimping and prostitution. The decision was made to shoot Cooke, keep the money and claim self-defense against someone they would portray as a deviant. The trajectory of the bullet does somewhat match Franklin's version, where both had been wrestling on the floor before she shot him. Although for her to retrieve the gun and shoot him, and Cooke to still be on the floor, it seems more likely that he was incapacitated at the time and shot almost execution style. Something seemingly overlooked at the trial was the fact that the gun Franklin had registered was a .32 caliber gun, whereas the gun used to shoot Cooke was a .22 caliber weapon. Did the gun belong to the hired help perhaps? Well aware of the indiscretions happening in her hotel, Evelyn Carr was contacted and informed of the situation. To aid in the story, she agreed to testify she heard the incident over the phone. The hired help left the scene and the police were called. I find it hard to believe that Cooke would feel the need to commit this kind of forced intimacy on Boyer, particularly with a woman who worked as a prostitute, and it would also appear completely out of character to those who knew him best. As I say though, that version of events is all just a theory, and as someone who enjoys Cooke's music, the hypothesis I just presented potentially comes from a place of bias. It's reasonable to believe, as much as I've tried to remain objective, I am swayed in wanting to see Sam Cooke as a victim rather than a perpetrator, but let me know in the comments what you think happened, and who you think may have been involved. One thing is for sure, when Sam Cooke died, the world lost an incredible singer and songwriter. One of those rare artists who appeared born to sing and perform on stage, as well as an entrepreneur who had created his own label and was giving opportunities to other young musicians. I've enjoyed his music since first hearing it around the age of 10, and while some may question whether the events on the night of his death taint his legacy, for me personally I don't think that's the case. There's just too many questions that remain about his death, and testimony from witnesses who were dubious and completely unreliable means we will probably never know exactly what happened that one night at the Hacienda Motel. It's sad to think the great music we were denied had he not been killed at the relatively young age of 33. I'll leave you with the late Tina Turner talking about her experience on meeting the singer labelled the King of Soul.
You said Sam Cooke was the only person who you ever wanted to take on vocal characteristics. And what a person to pick.
Oh, one story I have to tell you, I was not myself. He was at the Howard Theater in Washington, D.C., which is no longer there, or is, and people don't know what it is, but it's a place where most entertainers went for performance. And me and one of the Ikettes went, and no one else. And we walked in, the place was packed, and he was standing singing, popping his finger, his shirt was open, and remember the Continental suits, and he never put chemicals in his hair. It was just natural, good haircut. It's a pretty, really pretty black-skinned man, teeth and all. And I found myself walking to the stage. I was going on the stage, and the girl was pulling at me. She was going, you know, what are you doing? I was just mesmerized. He was so cool, standing there singing, and it was so good. He would laugh every now and then. You know, he was absolutely wonderful. And I did finally meet him in Miami, Florida. We were all at a hotel, and he was swimming, and he came over and sat down and talked to me. And that was very special because I didn't even know that Sam Cooke knew me. Still don't know if he knew me. I just think he was being nice. You know, as some people can see if someone is sad or something, and I was very sad at the time. And he sat down, he made my week. It was so great.
He said, there's a sad, sexy girl over there.
But the sad thing is, 2 weeks later, a month later, I heard of his death.
Oh, really?
So I had that moment of seeing him on stage, of him sitting and talking with me, poolside, making me happy, and then he left the planet.